There's a phrase in this paragraph where Justin says that the food, quote, is blessed by the prayer of his word. Now, that's a disputed phrase. What specifically Justin meant by it is in dispute. But maybe we should point out here that what is actually disputed is not only what does Justin mean, but how does that come to bear on our Eucharistic theology? When does the moment of consecration occur? And what is it that causes the consecration of the elements of bread and wine, the food? So, in the Western tradition, the moment of consecration is typically linked to the recitation of the words of institution, which is called the anaphora. The anaphora just simply means the remembrance. So, we do this in remembrance of Christ. We remember that in the upper room on during the Last Supper, Christ took bread and said, "This is my body. Take, eat, this is my body." So those are the words of institution. "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." Now, the phrase that Justin uses here, "the food is blessed by the word of his prayer, by the word of prayer which comes from him." It could mean that. In other words, by the word or formula of prayer which comes from Jesus, namely the words of institution. By the word of his prayer, the food, the bread and the wine is converted into the flesh and blood of Jesus. So it is important that, in the Western church, that's typically how they interpret Justin here, that Justin is referring to the words of institution, and it's by means of reciting those words, the words of institution, that the bread and wine are consecrated and substantially converted into the body and blood of Jesus. And it is important here, it's interesting at least, that Justin does go on to cite the words of institution.
Is there any indication of there being some flexibility there? I mean, we all kind of know what is meant by words of institution, but the precise portion of that, because we could take it from different portions of the Bible, you could take more or less. Is there? I guess I'm asking him how much of a directory is Justin working with? Says say this. Or does he think of it more generally with the ethos of the words that you're saying? Certainly doesn't think it's like a magical formula like abracadabra, but how precise is he with what exact words need to be said?
So that's a good question. Now, this is precisely the issue. Are there magical words? Abracadabra or hocus pocus.
Oh, there you go.
Hoc est
corpus meum.
So the magical formula hocus pocus comes from the Latin phrase hoc est corpus meum, which means this is my body. And in the Western tradition, it came to be believed and taught that it was by reciting those words, "This is my body, this is my blood," that the priest effected the substantial conversion of the elements. So transubstantiation occurred. The moment of consecration occurred by the recitation of those words. Now, to refer to them as some sort of magical formula is probably a bit pejorative.
Well, certainly they believe the Lord was doing this work. Perhaps, or maybe through secondary causes, right? But it's not. I could have a hard time thinking that any Orthodox believer would have thought that they just had the power within them to do this, independent of the Lord performing some miracle with these elements.
That's correct, and they would say, the Roman Church would say that Christ Himself is the one who transubstantiates the elements. He's the one who substantially converts them. And
but He uses means, right? He has ordained means that He wants us, in their construct, ordained means by which he desires the priest to do this thing. And then He blesses that activity when it's done in that way. That would be their understanding.
And when the priest pronounces those words, he's doing so in persona Christi. He's doing so in the person of Christ, or Christ is the one who is saying this. in the mouth of the priest. And so Christ at that moment is converting the elements into his body and blood. So it's not like the priest has a magical formula that he can use. That's not how they would put it.
Right, or
But
that he could just do it at the local Italian restaurant or anything. I mean, like I say that as a joke, but I'm also trying to make a point. I mean,
it's realistic, I think, is what you're trying to say, Camden, is there's a realistic view of these spiritual realities. Can I put it that way? In other words, this is not merely a verbal thing that we're saying. Clearly, I think that Justin would believe that something is actually spiritually happening, right?
Sure.